The Galactic War Council was not supposed to feel like a funeral, but it did. Asterion Station hung above a dying blue star, its silver towers locked in neutral orbit while fleets from 12 species waited in the dark outside. Every ship had weapons cold but not powered down. Every captain had orders to defend their own people first. Inside the highest council chamber, the most powerful leaders in the sector sat around a black stone table and pretended they were still here for peace. Queen Siren Vale sat at the center, wearing the pale armor of the Vale Dominion, her face calm, her eyes tired. She was young for a ruler, but everyone in the room knew she was the only person strong enough to keep the alliance from breaking. If she failed, the border systems would burn. If she died, the fleets outside would start firing before her body hit the floor. Admiral Veske of the Arkan fleet struck the table with one clawed hand. "We are wasting time," he growled. 3 supply routes have vanished. 2 colonies are silent. Someone in this room is feeding our enemy's movement charts. Across from him, Matriarch Aelin folded her long glass-like fingers together. Her species had no warships, only trade vessels, and fear moved through her voice even when she tried to hide it. "If your fleet takes command, Admiral, your enemies become our enemies. My people cannot survive your kind of war." General Korth, Queen Surin's chief commander, leaned forward, his heavy armor clicking softly. "Then stop asking warriors to protect merchants while refusing to pay the cost of protection." The chamber filled with angry voices. Translators hummed. Guards shifted near the walls. Queen Surin lifted one hand and the room slowly quieted. "Enough," she said. "We are not here to remember old insults. We are here because something is pushing us toward war. And if we answer without thinking, it wins." Near the far side of the table sat Ambassador Orv Maul of the Gyron Compact. He had said almost nothing since the meeting began. That was strange because the Jinn were famous for their peace laws, their long speeches, and their sacred council rituals. Maul was supposed to support Queen Surin's emergency alliance proposal. His people had signed 3 ancient treaties with hers. Yet tonight, he sat still, his silver hands folded neatly on the table, his black eyes moving from face to face without warmth. No one knew that the real Orv Maul had never reached Asterion Station. No one knew his body was hidden in a cold service compartment 2 decks below. No one knew the being wearing his face was waiting for the perfect moment to move. The human delegation had been placed at the back of the chamber, partly because humans were new to galactic politics, and partly because no one knew what to do with them yet. Humanity had no ancient claim in this conflict. They had no throne, no old blood feud, and no fleet large enough to scare the council. That made them useful as neutral observers. Daniel Mercer was the least important person among them. He was not a general, not an ambassador, not a hero from some famous battle. He was a cultural liaison, which meant his job was to read files, prevent insults, check seating rules, translate small gestures, and stop tired leaders from accidentally declaring war over the wrong hand movement. He had been awake for almost 30 hours, and after watching alien rulers argue through 3 failed sessions, Daniel had reached a very human conclusion. Angry people made worse decisions when they were hungry. The great council doors opened with a soft hiss. Every weapon in the room turned toward the sound. Daniel stepped inside carrying a polished silver tray covered with small bowls, wrapped wafers, chilled cakes, mineral gels, sealed cups, and tiny warning labels written in 4 different scripts. For one long second, the Galactic War Council stared at him in complete silence. General Korth was the first to speak. "Why is there a human servant carrying food into a war council?" Daniel stopped, swallowed, and adjusted his grip on the tray. "Technically, I am cultural support staff," he said, "and I was told this room had armed leaders, old grudges, no sleep, and no lunch break. On Earth, that is usually how bad decisions happen." A few delegates made confused sounds. One of the smaller diplomats gave a nervous laugh. Admiral Veske looked offended. Queen Surin stared at Daniel for a moment, and for the first time that evening, something almost like amusement touched her eyes. "Let him proceed," she said. "Perhaps humanity has discovered a weapon we have not." Daniel moved carefully around the table. He had not brought random food. He had spent 3 nights reading dietary files, medical alerts, and cultural rules. For Matriarch Aelin, he placed a mineral gel with no heat exposure. For Admiral Vesk, he offered bitter root strips strong enough for his species to taste. For General Korth, he placed a dense black wafer used by his people during long campaigns. Korth did not touch it. Daniel did not comment. Then Daniel reached Ambassador Maul. He lowered his voice out of respect. Ambassador Maul chilled mineral cake. No iron dust, no sugar, no animal protein, cooled below body temperature, and prepared according to Gyron Peace Council protocol. He held the small plate forward. Maul looked at the food, then at Daniel. "I do not accept human food," he said. The words were calm but too flat. Around the room, no one reacted much. A few delegates looked away, assuming the Jun ambassador had simply insulted the human. Daniel kept his polite smile, but something inside him slowed. According to the file, a Gyron diplomat did not have to eat a peace offering. He did not even have to like it. But during a wartime council, if safe food was offered, he had to touch it with 2 fingers and speak the old line. No blood at this table. It was not hunger. It was an oath. Maul had not touched the plate. He had not lowered his head. He had not spoken the line. Daniel almost corrected him, then stopped. He was only the human with the snack tray. Maybe the file was old. Maybe he had misunderstood. Maybe the ambassador was tired, offended, or following some private exception Daniel had not seen. So Daniel gave a small nod and moved on. "Of course, Ambassador." His voice stayed light, but his eyes flicked once to Maul's hands. The ambassador's fingers rested near his sleeve, still and close. Not relaxed like a bored diplomat, but ready like a person waiting for a signal. Daniel felt the hairs rise on the back of his neck. As he passed Queen Surin's place, he gently adjusted her teacup, moving it to and farther from Maul's side of the table. It was such a tiny movement that no guard noticed it. No leader noticed it. No soldier noticed it. But Ambassador Maul did. Across the chamber, his dark eyes shifted. For the first time that night, he stopped watching Queen Surin. He started watching the human. Daniel Mercer had made many mistakes in his life, but he had survived most of them by learning one rule: never assume you are the smartest person in a dangerous room. So when Ambassador Orv Maul started watching him, Daniel did not shout, did not point, and did not run to the guards like a frightened child. He simply kept moving around the council table with the tray in his hands, offering food to leaders who were too proud, too angry, or too afraid to admit they needed it. His face stayed polite. His voice stayed calm, but his mind kept returning to the same small problem. A Gyron ambassador had refused a peace offering without touching it. Not eating it was normal. Refusing the ritual was not. Maybe Daniel had read an outdated file. Maybe some emergency rule had changed. Maybe Maul was making a political statement. Daniel wanted all those things to be true because the other answer was far worse. The council continued, but the room had changed for Daniel. He no longer heard only arguments. He began watching hands, eye movements, breathing patterns, who leaned toward Queen Surin and who leaned away. Admiral Veske demanded control of the Western fleets. Matriarch Allen warned that trade colonies would starve if military routes replaced supply routes. General Korvath kept one hand near his sidearm and his eyes on everyone except the human. Queen Surin listened to all of them with the exhausted patience of someone carrying a war on her shoulders. Ambassador Maul said nothing. That silence bothered Daniel more than the refusal. The Gyron were ritual speakers. Their diplomats loved structure, oaths, formal phrases, repeated promises. Maul's quietness felt like an actor afraid to improvise. During the first recess, the council lights softened, and the leaders withdrew into smaller conversations around the chamber. Daniel saw his chance. He placed the tray on a side table, wiped his damp palms against his jacket, and walked toward Ambassador Maul with the careful smile of a man trying not to get executed by protocol. "Ambassador," Daniel said softly, "may I apologize for the offering earlier? If the chilled mineral cake was prepared incorrectly, the fault is mine. I followed the Gyron Peace Council protocol, but human understanding of older customs is not perfect." Maul turned slowly. His coped face showed mild irritation, but his eyes remained too still. "Human customs are strange," he replied. "Your error is expected." Daniel nodded as if accepting the insult, but inside another small warning bell rang. A real Jin diplomat would have corrected the mistake, proudly, precisely, probably for several minutes. Daniel kept his tone humble. "Of course, I only wanted to show respect. I believe the phrase begins, 'No blood at this table.'" Maul's fingers twitched once. It was almost nothing, but Daniel saw it because he was looking for almost nothing. "Yes," Maul said. "Something like that." Daniel smiled again, though his stomach had gone cold. Something like that. No Gyron diplomat would ever say something like that about a sacred oath. The full line was clear in the file. "No blood at this table. No blade beneath the hand." Daniel dipped his head. "Thank you, Ambassador. I will make a note for future councils." He stepped away before Maul could read too much on his face. Daniel moved straight to a wall terminal near the service alcove and pretended to check allergy updates. His fingers shook as he searched the station archive. Jaren diplomatic ritual, wartime council, food offering, mandatory acknowledgement. The answer returned in clean blue text. No revision, no exception, no political suspension. During active war negotiation, any safe food offering must be touched and acknowledged by the Jaren peace line. Daniel stared at the words for 3 seconds longer than he should have. Then he closed the file and turned away. He still had no proof of murder, no right to accuse a senior ambassador, and no authority to stop the council. What he had was a broken custom, a wrong answer, and a feeling growing heavier by the second. He found one of Queen Surin's guards near the inner pillar, a tall veil soldier with a white crest and tired eyes. Daniel stepped close enough to speak quietly. "I may be wrong," he said. The guard did not look at him. Humans often are. Daniel accepted that. "Then treat this as a human being wrong carefully. Please keep Ambassador Maul away from the Queen's right side." Now the guard looked at him. "Why?" Daniel glanced across the chamber. Maul was speaking to no one, but his body was angled toward Queen Surin's chair. "Because he broke a Gyron peace ritual, and when I apologized, he did not know how to correct me." The guard's expression hardened, but not with belief, with annoyance. "That is not enough to accuse an ambassador." Daniel nodded. "I know that is why I am not accusing him. I am asking you to stand 2 steps to the left." For a moment, the guard did nothing. Then perhaps, because Daniel looked more afraid than ambitious, he shifted position. Only 2 steps, almost meaningless. But now his body stood between Maul and the Queen's right side. Daniel released a breath he had not realized he was holding. Across the chamber, Ambassador Maul noticed. His eyes flicked to the guard, then to Daniel. This time there was no doubt. He knew the human was interfering. The recess ended. The leaders returned to the table. Queen Surin raised her cup and began to speak. "If we divide our fleets, the border systems fall within 7 days. If we unite them without trust, we create a weapon no one can control. So we will begin with limited command sharing, monitored by neutral observers." Admiral Vesk started to object, but Daniel was no longer watching him. He was watching Maul's sleeve. The ambassador's hand moved slowly under the table edge. Not enough to alarm a soldier, but enough to make Daniel's throat tight. The guard Daniel had worn shifted again, blocking the angle. Maul's hand stopped. Daniel had no plan. Fear made the decision for him. He grabbed the empty snack tray from the side table and let it fall. Metal struck stone with a sharp crash that cut through every translator in the room. Every head turned. General Korth rose from his chair, furious. "Human, what is wrong with you?" Daniel's face burned. His heart hammered against his ribs. He looked foolish, small, and completely out of place, which was exactly how he felt. But he forced himself to speak. "I apologize," he said. "But before this council continues, I think Ambassador Maul should be asked to complete the Jar peace oath." Silence fell. Queen Surin's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but understanding. "Ambassador Maul," she said carefully, "for the comfort of this council, complete the oath." Maul stared at Daniel. Then he smiled. "No blood at this table," he said. He stopped there. On the hollow screen behind him, the remote Gyron observers went pale. One elder lifted a trembling hand and whispered, "That is not Orv Maul." Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the council chamber, so completely that for one breath even the translators stopped humming. Daniel heard chairs scrape against stone, armor plates shift, claws click, and someone whisper a prayer in a language the system no longer translated. Then emergency lights flashed red along the floor, and the room became a nightmare of shadows and moving weapons. General Korth roared, "Protect the Queen!" But his voice was drowned by the scream of security doors sealing shut. Daniel dropped to one knee behind the side table, just as something thin and bright cut through the space where his throat had been. The blade struck the wall behind him and vanished back into the dark. Ambassador Maul, or the thing wearing Maul's face, was no longer seated. His body had stretched taller, his silver skin rippling like wet glass, his black eyes fixed on Daniel with cold hatred. Queen Surin stood behind 2 guards, one hand on the edge of the table, calm but pale. "Who are you?" she demanded. The false ambassador tilted his head. "The knife your enemies were too afraid to hold." Then the chamber doors burst inward from the service side. Not the main doors, not the military entrance, the service side. Figures in council staff uniforms rushed in with silent weapons, moving too fast and too smoothly to be frightened civilians. The first Veil Guard raised his rifle, but the station defense turret above him turned and fired. He fell before he could pull the trigger. Matriarch Allen cried out. Admiral Veska overturned his chair and reached for his own weapon. The room exploded into panic. Daniel pressed himself against the table, breathing hard. He was not trained for this. He was not brave in the way soldiers were brave. His hands shook so badly he almost dropped the small emergency access card clipped to his belt. Across the chamber, Korth slammed one assassin into the wall with enough force to crack armor, then dragged Queen Surin behind him. "Main security corridor," he shouted. "Move now." Daniel looked toward the corridor sign glowing above the sealed military exit. Then he remembered the service map he had studied while arranging food deliveries. Main corridor, direct path, clean angle, strong doors. Too obvious, too perfect. "No!" Daniel shouted. Korth turned on him with murder in his eyes. "This is not your place, human." Daniel pointed toward the military corridor. "That is where I would put the second trap." Korth bared his teeth. "You are not a soldier." Daniel swallowed. "No. I am the person who had to move 47 snack boxes through this station without setting off security alarms. I know which doors people ignore." Another turret fired. A guard pushed Queen Surin down and took the shot in his shoulder. Surin looked from Korth to Daniel. The chamber shook as something detonated beyond the wall. "General," she said, "use the human's route." Korth looked as if the order hurt him more than any wound, but he obeyed. "Move!" he growled. "If this kills us, Mercer, I will haunt your species." Daniel led them toward a narrow panel behind the refreshment alcove. It looked like a wall, but it opened when he slapped his access card against a hidden reader. A stale gust of cold air spilled out. "Catering drone tunnel," Daniel said. "It connects to supply lift 3. Admiral Veska stared at the opening. "You expect us to crawl through a food chute?" Daniel looked back at the assassins, cutting through the last line of guards. "Only if you want to keep breathing." Queen Surin went first, guided by the wounded Veil Guard. Matriarch Allen followed, shaking so hard her glass-like fingers clicked together. Korth shoved Daniel in after them, then backed into the passage last, firing into the chamber until the panel sealed. The tunnel was low, cold, and smelled faintly of oil and spices. Daniel crawled forward on his elbows, trying not to think about the sounds behind them. Metal screamed as the assassins found the hidden panel. "How far?" Queen Surin asked from ahead, her voice tight but controlled. 30 m to the supply lift," Daniel said. "Then down 2 decks to kitchen storage. From there, we can reach medical or external comms." Korth snorted behind him. "You know this because of snacks." Daniel forced air into his lungs. "Yes, absurd," Korth muttered. Daniel almost laughed, but it came out wrong. "General, I agree." Halfway through the tunnel, the lights flickered. A small maintenance drone rolled from a side slot, its cutting arm extended. Daniel froze. The drone scanned them, then turned toward Queen Surin. Korth raised his weapon, but Daniel grabbed his wrist. "Don't shoot. It will alert the system. It is about to cut her open." Daniel reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a strip of bitter root wafer meant for Korvath species. He tossed it down the tunnel. The drone sensor head snapped toward the movement and rolled after it, confused by the heat signature in the wrapper. Daniel whispered, "Now." They crawled past while the drone carved the snack into smoking pieces. Korth stared at Daniel in disbelief. "You distracted a murder machine with food." Daniel whispered back. It was a very expensive wafer. They reached the supply lift just as the tunnel panel behind them began to buckle. Daniel punched the manual release. Nothing happened. He tried again. The lift remained dead. "They locked it," the wounded guard said. Daniel looked at the control box, then at the tray label still stuffed in his pocket. He pulled out a thin metal allergy tag and jammed it under the access plate. The cover popped open. "Human," Korvath said dangerously. "Tell me you know what you are doing." Daniel crossed 2 wires he had absolutely no permission to touch. "I know what I am hoping." The lift dropped so suddenly everyone slammed against the wall. Matriarch Elin screamed. Daniel bit his tongue hard enough to taste blood. The lift doors opened onto kitchen storage. For one beautiful second, Daniel thought they were safe. Then he saw the crates. His crates. The snack delivery boxes were stacked in the center of the room, but the seals were broken, and the labels had been replaced with clean printed tags. Daniel stepped closer, dread crawling up his spine. One lid sat half open. Inside, under a layer of packing cloth, were compact explosive charges marked with human supply codes. Korth saw them too. Slowly, he turned his weapon toward Daniel. "Explain," he said. Daniel raised his hands, his voice barely above a whisper. "I cannot." Behind them, something heavy struck the sealed lift doors from the other side. The assassins had found the route. For several seconds, the only sound in the kitchen storage bay was the heavy pounding against the sealed lift doors. Daniel stood with both hands raised, staring at the explosives inside his own snack crate. while General Korth aimed a weapon at his chest. Queen Surin leaned against the wounded guard, her face pale under the red emergency lights. Admiral Veske looked ready to kill someone just to feel useful. Matriarch Alan trembled near a stack of cooling tanks, whispering the names of her colonies like prayers. Daniel wanted to explain. He wanted to say this was impossible, that he had checked every crate himself, that he had only brought food, labels, and a foolish human hope that hungry leaders might argue less. But all the evidence in front of them had his name on it. Korvath's voice was low and dangerous. Human supply codes, human delivery crates, human access tags, human fingerprints. Daniel swallowed. Yes, you let us here. Yes, and here we find weapons hidden inside your cargo. Daniel looked at Queen Surin, then back at the gun pointed at him. Yes. Korth's finger tightened on the trigger. Then give me one reason I should not execute you right now. Daniel's mouth went dry. He was not brave. Not in that moment. His knees felt weak, and every instinct in his body screamed for him to beg. But begging would make him look guilty. So he forced himself to stand still. If I am guilty, shoot me, he said. But if I am not, then the person who framed me is still close enough to finish the queen. The pounding at the lift doors grew louder. Something metal bent inward. Korth did not lower his weapon. Convenient words. Daniel nodded quickly. I know. Admiral Veske stepped closer, claws flexing. Humans arrive as neutral observers. Then the queen is attacked and human explosives appear in the escape route. This is not coincidence. Daniel turned toward him. No, it is not. That is the point. It is too clean. Korvath's eyes narrowed. Explain. Daniel took one careful step toward the crate, then stopped when Korvath's weapon followed him. My real crates were not clean. I packed them myself after the station printer kept mistranslating human food names. It turned peanut into bone seed. It turned cinnamon into thermal bark poison. I stopped using the printer. He pointed at the crate. Those labels are printed. Korth glanced at the labels but did not move. Daniel spoke faster now, fear sharpening his thoughts. My actual labels were handwritten, messy in black marker. I put stupid notes on them because I was tired and because food allergies kill people faster than diplomacy does. Queen Surin lifted her head slightly. What kind of notes? Daniel looked embarrassed, despite everything. Things like no peanuts. Seriously, do not test this, and safe for Blue Bee blood species only. And ask Daniel before serving because I do not trust the scanner. For the first time, the wounded guard gave a weak, surprised laugh. Daniel pointed again. These are perfect, official. Someone copied my delivery record, but they did not copy how I actually packed the crates. Queen Surin looked at Korv. General Korth's jaw worked as if lowering the weapon caused him physical pain. At last, he shifted the barrel away from Daniel's chest. If you are lying, human, I will make your death educational. Daniel exhaled shakily. That seems fair. The lift door shrieked. A blade punched through the metal from the other side. Korth turned at once. Positions. The wounded guard tried to stand straighter. Admiral Veske pulled a sidearm from beneath his cloak. Matriarch Elin backed behind a storage column. Queen Surin reached for a ceremonial dagger at her belt. Daniel stared at her. You have a knife. She gave him a tired look. I am a queen, not a decoration. The doors burst open. 3 assassins rushed through, their bodies flickering between stolen faces and glass-like shadows. Korvath fired first, dropping one, but the second moved low and fast, sliding beneath the shot. Admiral Vest caught it across the shoulder with his claws, but it twisted free and drove him backward into the wall. The third assassin went straight for Queen Surin. Daniel grabbed the nearest thing on the shelf without thinking. A sealed pouch of red earth spice meant for a soup demonstration after the council. He tore it open with his teeth and threw the powder into the assassin's face. The effect was instant. The creature screamed. Its camouflage shattered. Sensory vents opened along its neck, leaking pale smoke as it staggered blindly into Korvath's reach. Korvath hit it like a falling wall. The assassin slammed into the floor hard enough to crack the tiles. Daniel stood frozen with the empty spice pouch in his hand. Everyone stared at him. He wiped red powder from his mouth and coughed. That was supposed to go on soup. Korth looked down at the twitching assassin, then back at Daniel. Your food is violent. Daniel shook his head. Only if misused. Another assassin lunged from the broken doorway faster than the others. Korth turned too late. The creature's blade flashed toward Queen Surin's throat. Daniel moved without thinking, not because he was trained, but because he was already standing closest. He shoved the queen sideways. The blade missed her neck, but cut across her upper arm. Queen Surin gasped. The wound was small, almost nothing. Then black veins began spreading under her silver skin. The wounded guard shouted, "Toxin blade!" Corv's face changed. All his anger vanished, replaced by pure fear. He caught the queen as her knees failed. Daniel dropped beside her, his hands hovering uselessly. "What do we need?" he asked. The guard pressed shaking fingers near the wound. "At Antidote Medical Wing, Deck 9. Admiral Vesk stared toward the broken lift doors. "The assassins control that path." Corvith lifted Queen Surin into his arms and looked at Daniel with a hatred that had become something closer to desperate trust. "Then find us another path, snack human." Daniel looked at the Queen's fading eyes, then at the service map on the wall. "There is one," he said, "but you are really not going to like it." The path Daniel chose was not a corridor. It was a maintenance crawlway behind the kitchen storage bay built for cleaning drones and emergency coolant pipes. Not queens, generals, diplomats, or terrified humans who were beginning to regret every career choice they had ever made. Corvith carried Queen Surin in both arms as if she weighed nothing, but Daniel could see the truth in the general's face. He was wounded, tired, and afraid. The toxin was spreading fast through the queen's arm, black lines crawling under her pale skin toward her shoulder. Her eyes opened and closed as she fought to stay conscious. "How long?" Daniel asked. The wounded guard pressed a scanner to the queen's wrist and went still. "Not long enough," he said. Corvith's voice became sharp. "Then move faster." Daniel crawled ahead, using one hand to follow the pipe markings and the other to keep his balance. The medical wing is 2 decks down and 1 section across, but the main path is blocked. This crawlway reaches the old preparation kitchen. From there, we can reach a service tunnel near medical storage. Admiral Veske, crawling behind him with one arm bleeding, growled. "Why does every escape route you know involve food?" Daniel answered without looking back. "Because nobody invites cultural support staff into war rooms, Admiral. They invite us into kitchens." Behind them, distant metal boomed. The assassins had broken through the storage bay. Daniel forced himself not to look back. The crawlway opened into a narrow preparation kitchen filled with hanging utensils, heating plates, sealed oil tanks, and spiced drawers from 20 different worlds. The room was dark, except for red emergency strips along the floor. Corvith laid Queen Surin on a steel preparation table. She looked smaller there, less like a ruler and more like a person who had been asked to carry too much for too long. Daniel tore open a clean cloth pack and pressed it near the wound. "I am not a doctor," he said. Surin's lips moved in a weak smile. "Neither am I." The attempt at humor hurt to hear. Corvith turned to the wounded guard. "Can you reach the antidote?" The guard shook his head. "Medical storage is sealed from the outside. Someone has locked it under Council emergency authority." Admiral Veska looked toward Daniel. "Human, tell me you have another ridiculous door." Daniel did not answer at first. His eyes had moved to the spice pouch still tied at his belt, the same red powder he had thrown into the assassin's sensory vents. He remembered the fake ambassador refusing the Gyron mineral cake. At first, Daniel thought it was only because he did not know the culture. But the cake had also been dusted with a harmless earth spice. Not for flavor, but to neutralize the mineral smell for human handlers. The assassin had avoided touching it completely. In the storage bay, the red spice had not only blinded the attacker, it had broken its camouflage. Daniel looked around the kitchen at the heating plates, ventilation fans, oil tanks, spice drawers, and broken service drones. Slowly, a terrible idea formed. Corvith saw his face. "What?" Daniel swallowed. The assassins are not just sensitive to this spice. Their bodies react to it. It disrupts whatever they use to hide. Veske narrowed his eyes. "Can you weaponize it?" Daniel looked at the queen, then back at the doors. "No, but I can cook badly enough to make them regret following us." They worked fast. Daniel dumped spice powder into heating trays, mixed it with thick cooking oil, and positioned the trays beneath the ventilation intake. The wounded guard rooed the fan system with shaking hands while Vesk dragged metal storage racks into a narrow funnel near the entrance. Corvith watched Daniel with open disbelief. "This is your plan." Daniel lit another heating plate and coughed as red vapor began to rise. "This is half a plan. The other half is hoping they are arrogant." Queen Surin opened her eyes. "Most killers are." Daniel glanced at her. "Please do not help. You are supposed to be resting." Her voice was weak. "I am a queen. Giving orders while dying is part of the position." Despite the fear, Daniel almost smiled. The assassins arrived in silence, 3 shadows sliding through the kitchen entrance. At first, they were barely visible, their bodies bending the air like heat above stone. Then the ventilation fans roared. Red spice vapor rolled through the narrow path. The first assassin stumbled. Its skin flickered from stolen flesh to glassy muscle. The second tried to leap over the racks, but oil sprayed beneath its feet and sent it crashing sideways. Veske struck it with both claws. The wounded guard fired twice. Corvith charged into the cloud like a living wall, slamming the largest assassin against a heating unit. Daniel grabbed Queen Surin and pulled her off the table just as a hidden blade cut through the space where her head had been. The last assassin had crawled along the ceiling, choking, but still moving. Daniel threw himself over the queen. The blade struck his shoulder instead of her chest. Pain flashed white through Daniel's body. He hit the floor hard, but Corvith reached the assassin before it could strike again. The general broke its arm, drove it into the floor, and held it there while Vesk finished the fight. For a moment, no one moved. The kitchen was full of smoke, oil, broken metal, and the burned smell of ruined spices. Daniel lay beside Queen Surin, breathing through clenched teeth. She turned her head toward him, her voice barely a whisper. Why? Daniel blinked through the pain. Why? What? Why protect me? My council mocked you. My commander nearly killed you. Daniel looked at her, not as a queen, but as the exhausted person he had noticed before anyone else had. Because before anyone tried to murder you, he said softly, you looked tired, and no one in that room treated you like a person. The wounded guard finally forced medical storage open and injected the antidote into Surin's arm. The black vein stopped spreading, but her body went limp. Corvith checked her pulse, then released a breath that sounded almost broken. She lives. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second. Then the station speakers crackled. A dying assassin's recorded voice filled the room. Human explosives have struck the council. Humanity has betrayed the alliance. Outside the station through the kitchen viewport, alien warships began turning toward the human vessel. Targeting lights bloomed across the glass like red stars. For a moment, nobody in the ruined preparation kitchen moved. Through the viewport, the alien fleets outside Asterion Station turned their weapons toward the small human diplomatic ship like predators turning toward blood in the water. Red targeting lights crawled across the glass. Daniel pushed himself upright with one shaking arm, biting back a sound as pain burned through his wounded shoulder. Queen Surin was alive but barely conscious. General Corvith stood over her with one hand pressed to her pulse point, his face hard with fear he was too proud to show. Admiral Vesk stared at the viewport, his jaw tight. My fleet is receiving the assassin's message, he said. So are the others. Matriarch Allen covered her mouth with trembling fingers. They believe humanity attacked the council. Daniel looked at the human ship outside, small and helpless among warships large enough to break moons. How long before they fire? Veske did not answer. That was answer enough. Corvith turned on Daniel, but this time there was no accusation in his eyes, only urgency. You saw the truth. Can you prove it? Daniel's mind raced through every moment since he entered the council chamber. The snack tray, the labels, the oath, the false ambassador watching him, the dropped tray. Then he remembered the small black recorder clipped beneath the tray handle. He had activated it before entering the room, not for politics, not for security, but for allergy accountability. If any delegate reacted badly to human food, Daniel wanted proof of what had been served and when. It was boring. It was practical. It was very human. He looked up slowly. The tray recorded everything. Corvith frowned. Where is it? Daniel swallowed. The council chamber. The journey back felt longer than the whole war. The station corridors were cracked, filled with smoke, emergency lights, and distant alarms. Corvith carried Queen Surin until the wounded guard and Matriarch Allen took her toward a safer medical alcove. Daniel wanted to go with them, but he forced himself toward the chamber. Corvith walked beside him, limping now. Vesk followed, one clawed hand pressed against his bleeding side. If we fail, Vesk said, my fleet will fire first. They will not wait to be blamed next. Daniel kept moving. Then we should not fail. Corvith gave him a grim look. That is not a strategy. Daniel managed a weak smile. No, it is more of a human tradition. They reached the council chamber through a half-collapsed service passage. The room that had once held the leaders of 12 species now looked like the inside of a broken machine. The black stone table was cracked. Chairs were overturned. Smoke curled from dead turrets. Bodies lay beneath emergency sheets where the surviving guards had pulled them aside. Daniel saw the silver tray near the queen's seat, bent under a fallen chair, but not destroyed. He staggered toward it and dropped to one knee. His fingers found the recorder under the handle. A small blue light still blinked. It has the file, he said, almost laughing from relief. Then a voice behind him whispered, Then give it to me. The last assassin stepped from behind the broken council screen. Its body flickered badly now, damaged by spice and smoke, but the blade in its hand was steady. Korth moved, but pain slowed him. Vesk lifted his weapon, but the assassin was already behind Daniel, blade close to his throat. Humans, the assassin hissed, always touching small things, always noticing what should not matter. Daniel held the recorder in his bloody hand. It mattered to Ambassador Maul. The assassin's face twisted into a poor copy of Maul's smile. Maul died begging. Korth growled, but Daniel lifted his free hand slightly. Not yet. His eyes moved past the assassin to the damaged transmitter panel on the wall. Vesk saw the glance. So did Korvath. Daniel needed time. Daniel slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out the last wrapped snack from the tray. Crushed but sealed, the assassin stared at it. "What is that?" Daniel's voice shook, but he kept it calm. "A peace offering." The assassin laughed softly. "You still think food matters?" Daniel met its eyes. "No, I think what people do when offered peace matters." The assassin leaned closer. "I am not Jin. I do not need your oath." Daniel nodded. "I know. That is how you lost." The assassin's eyes narrowed. For 1 second, its attention stayed on Daniel instead of the others. That was enough. Veske lunged sideways and slammed his claw into the transmitter panel, forcing power through the broken system. Korth drove his shoulder into the assassin and tore Daniel free as the blade cut air instead of flesh. Daniel hit the floor and jammed the recorder into the transmitter slot. Static screamed across the chamber. Then the recording played across every open fleet channel. Daniel's own voice filled the system. Ambassador Maul chilled mineral cake prepared according to Gyron Peace Council protocol. Then Maul's false voice. "I do not accept human food." The recording continued. Daniel's apology. The broken oath. Queen Surin asking him to complete it. The silence after the missing line. The Gyron elder whispering that is not Orv Maul. Then the image feed appeared showing the false ambassador's face shifting before the attack. Outside the viewport, one fleet stopped charging weapons. Then another, then another. Queen Cernan's weak voice entered the channel from the medical alcove. "This council was attacked by imposters. Humanity is not our enemy. Stand down." Silence followed. Then the red targeting lights vanished from the human ship. Later, when the station was secure and the dead had been counted, Daniel sat beside the rebuilt council table with his shoulder wrapped and his snack tray ruined beyond repair. Queen Surin, pale but alive, named him first witness of the council. General Korth said nothing at first. He simply picked up one surviving human snack, studied it like a dangerous weapon, and ate it. His face tightened with disgust. Daniel blinked. "You hate it." Korth swallowed. "Yes. Then why take it?" Korth looked at the table where war had almost begun. "Because now I understand what it means. The galaxy would remember the assassination, the ambush, and the fleets that almost fired. But Queen Surin remembered something smaller, a tired human walking into a room full of weapons, carrying food, and somehow saving them.